The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. This audio version is published by Oasis Audio through an agreement with Northfield Publishing. The 5 Love Languages is read by Gary Chapman.
Chapter 1. What happens to love after the wedding? At 30,000 feet, somewhere between Buffalo and Dallas, he put his magazine in his seat pocket, turned in my direction, and asked, "What kind of work do you do?" "I do marriage counseling and lead marriage enrichment seminars," I said matter-of-factly. "I've been wanting to ask someone this question for a long time," he said. "What happens to love after you get married?" Relinquishing my hopes of getting a nap, I asked, "What do you mean?" "Well," he said, "I've been married 3 times, and each time it was wonderful before we got married. But somehow, after the wedding, it all fell apart. All the love I thought I had for her, and the love she seemed to have for me, evaporated. I'm a fairly intelligent person. I operate a successful business, but I don't understand it." "How long were you married?" I asked. "The first one lasted about 10 years. The second time, we were married 3 years, and the last one, almost 6 years." "Did your love evaporate immediately after the wedding, or was it a gradual loss?" I inquired. "Well, the second one went wrong from the very beginning. I don't know what happened. I really thought we loved each other, but the honeymoon was a disaster, and we never recovered. We only dated 6 months. It was a whirlwind romance. It was really exciting, but after the wedding, it was a battle from the beginning. In my first marriage, we had 3 or 4 good years before the baby came. After the baby was born, I felt like she gave her attention to the baby, and I no longer mattered. It was as if her one goal in life was to have a baby, and after the baby, she no longer needed me." "Did you tell her that?" I asked. "Oh, yes, I told her. She said I was crazy. She said I did not understand the stress of being a 24-hour nurse. She said I should be more understanding and help her more. I really tried, but it didn't seem to make any difference. After that, we just grew further apart. After a while, there was no love left, just deadness. Both of us agreed that the marriage was over. My last marriage, I really thought that one would be different. I'd been divorced for 3 years. We dated each other for 2 years. I really thought we knew what we were doing, and I thought that perhaps for the first time I really knew what it meant to love someone. I genuinely felt that she loved me. After the wedding, I don't think I changed. I continued to express love to her as I had before the marriage. I told her how beautiful she was. I told her how much I loved her. I told her how proud I was to be her husband. But a few months after marriage, she started complaining about petty things at first, like my not taking the garbage out or not hanging up my clothes. But later, she went to attacking my character, telling me she didn't feel she could trust me, accusing me of not being faithful to her. She became a totally negative person. Before marriage, she was never negative. She was one of the most positive people I've ever met. That's one of the things that attracted me to her. She never complained about anything. Everything I did was wonderful. But once we were married, it seemed I could do nothing right. I honestly don't know what happened. Eventually, I lost my love for her and began to resent her. She obviously had no love for me. We agreed there was no benefit to our living together any longer, so we split. That was a year ago. So my question is, what happens to love after the wedding? Is my experience common? Is that why we have so many divorces in this country? I can't believe asking or the research jargon that is almost incomprehensible. Sometimes they're couched in humor and folklore. Most of the jokes and pithy sayings contain some truth, but they are like offering an aspirin to a person with cancer. The desire for romantic love in marriage is deeply rooted in our psychological makeup. Almost every popular magazine has at least one article each issue on keeping love alive in a marriage. Books abound on the subject. Television and radio talk shows deal with it. Keeping love alive in our marriages is serious business. With all the books and magazines and practical help available, why is it so few couples seem to have found the secret to keeping love alive after the wedding? Why is it that a couple can attend a communication workshop, hear wonderful ideas on how to enhance communication, return home, and find themselves totally unable to implement the communication patterns demonstrated? How is it that we read a magazine article on 101 ways to express love to your spouse, select 2 or 3 ways that seem especially good to us, try them, and our spouse doesn't even acknowledge our effort? We give up on the other 98 and go back to life as usual. The answer to those questions is the purpose of this book. It is not that the books and articles already published are not helpful. The problem is that we have overlooked one fundamental truth. People speak different love languages. In the area of linguistics, there are major language groups: Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, English, Portuguese, Greek, German, French, and so on. Most of us grow up learning the language of our parents and siblings, which becomes our primary or native tongue. Later, we may learn additional languages, but usually with much more effort. These become our secondary languages. We speak and understand best our native language. We feel most comfortable speaking that language. The more we use a secondary language, the more comfortable we become conversing in it. If we speak only our primary language and encounter someone else who speaks only his or her primary language, which is different from ours, our communication will be limited. We must rely on pointing, grunting, drawing pictures, or acting out our ideas. We can communicate, but it is awkward. Language differences are part and parcel of human culture. If we are to communicate effectively across cultural lines, we must learn the language of those with whom we wish to communicate. In the area of love, it is similar. Your emotional love language and the love language of your spouse may be as different as Chinese from English. No matter how hard you try to express love in English, if your spouse understands only Chinese, you will never understand how to love each other. My friend on the plane was speaking the love language of affirming words to his third wife when he said, "I told her how beautiful she was. I told her how I loved her. I told her how proud I was to be her husband." He was speaking love, and he was sincere, but she did not understand his language. Perhaps she was looking for love in his behavior and didn't see it. Being sincere is not enough. We must be willing to learn our spouse's primary love language if we're to be effective communicators of love. My conclusion, after 30 years of marriage counseling, is that there are basically 5 emotional love languages. 5 ways that people speak and understand emotional love. In the field of linguistics, a language may have numerous dialects or variations. Similarly, within the 5 basic emotional love languages, there are many dialects. That accounts for the magazine articles entitled 10 Ways to Let Your Spouse Know You Love Her, 20 Ways to Keep Your Man at Home, or 365 Expressions of Marital Love. There are not 10, 20, or 365 basic love languages. In my opinion, there are only 5. However, there may be numerous dialects. The number of ways to express love within a love language is limited only by one's imagination. The important thing is to speak the love language of your spouse.